Hey guys, welcome back. Fox Airsoft, as always, is doing their free airsoft gun giveaway. There's a link in the description if you want to enter the free gun giveaway for your chance to win a free high-end airsoft gun. The reason I'm reviewing a G&G airsoft gun is because Perrin recently sent over their ETU++ for me to review, and so I needed a G&G gun with their ETU built in so I could compare them. This exceeded all expectations of performance and just awesome factor. It's so small, yet when I took it out to the field, I was able to hit targets at 200 feet with a .32 gram BB. This thing absolutely rocks in performance. I am thoroughly amazed. It's not every day I can say that. Out of the box, without doing any work to it, it was really straight up awesome. That's amazing. Can we get more airsoft guns like this on the market? It's just really cool. The gun is a pretty streamlined package. It literally comes with one 450 round high capacity magazine and a pretty basic instruction manual. It's only got a couple of pages of English. The rest are translations to other languages. It gets you by as far as the basics of hop-up adjustment, battery install, and things like that, but it's not terribly detailed. As always, we'll start with the back of the airsoft gun and work our way forward. It does have a 2-position, really stiff telescoping stock. I do like how stiff this is. It doesn't wobble hardly at all. It's very comfortable, actually. It does have kind of a diamond texture on the back, so it grips the shoulder reasonably well, but the contact for the shoulder isn't very big. I wish it was a little bit taller. To install your battery, you do have to remove the stock, and it takes a little bit of force, but it comes out without a problem. The battery compartment is basically what I would call the entire buffer tube here. You press up on this little button on the back, take the cap off, and remove a lot of MOSFET and wiring. It does have a mini Type 2 connector and a rather large MOSFET. The biggest thing I can criticize about the gun is the lack of battery space. There really isn't a lot, but I know there are extensions on the market. I believe AirTech Studio sells an extension just for this, so if you need a little bit more room, I definitely recommend it. You can get options out there, but as is, there isn't really a lot of battery space. You're very limited on battery options and sizes. Just so you know, I'm weird and I like the stock all the way in just because how compact it is. I don't even want to shoulder the thing. I just want to hold it. And I don't think any stock ever has made me want to do that exactly. This thing is just weird. The gun also has a little sling hook back here, and you can just hang this. It's light enough and small enough that I'd probably just get a 1-point sling and hang it really simply. The gun's receiver is actually loaded with functionality. I do like it. The selector, safe semi-full auto, is ambi, so if I want to go to the other side and do it, I can. It actually works pretty well. Some selectors have a little bit of slack to them where they don't want to work on the right side as well as the left. This one works equally well on both, which was rather surprising. The mag catch is ambi actually, so you've got a left side paddle and the standard right side button that are both functional. The full metal body is pretty lightweight. It almost feels like polymer or plastic, but it's not, and I really like that just because it feels really good. It's got a really nice rough texture all over it, and it's kind of got a billet feel to it. So I really do actually like the look and feel of the gun. The charging handle is ambi, so I can pull it from either side, and it works all the same, so which is really nice. I can pull it, and underneath the fake dust cover is the rotary style hop that clicks very positively and stays in place rather well. There is no bolt catch, so it's just a fake little paddle on the left side, despite the fact that it is spring loaded. The sights on this gun are almost Knights-esque. The rear one is just before windage and elevation. It's just a little post with a single small peep aperture, and the front one is just adjustable for elevation. I do like how kind of minimal these are, so if you want to put like a small dot sight on here, you won't have a problem doing that. The rail system up front is fairly unique. It's pretty aggressive looking, and I do like the fact that it is very M-LOK compatible. You've got M-LOK slots on the sides and bottom, so I really want to get like a little mag pull grip and put it on here. Maybe a small light on the right side. I think that suit the gun really well, and you do have the capability of doing that very easily. Finally, the flash hider or amplifier up front, albeit very small, really makes a big difference. Shooting this on the field and even chronoing it here, it's extremely loud. If you run this CQB, you will scare people, I guarantee it. Running on the field, you will turn heads because it's just loud. It's incredible. The amount of air volume for the short barrel plus an amplifier really makes a difference. Small bonuses are the trigger guard is bowed, so you get a little bit more room here if you've got gloves or really fat fingers by chance, and you get a flat face trigger. So it's very comfortable, and I really like it. Now that I'm done gawking about the externals, let's put this on the tech table, open it up, and see what the internals are like. The core internals of the ARP556 include the long type motor, hop-up and barrel, and of course the gearbox and the MOSFET in there as well. I'm going to start with the motor, go to the hop-up, and then check out the gearbox. The motor is G&G's IFRIT 25,000 motor, or 25K motor. This has a lot of torque. I'm really impressed. You just don't get nice torquey motors like this in too many airsoft guns, so this is a major plus for this gun. It does use an O-type pinion, and the pinion itself is really good quality. G&G always has fantastic gear quality in their guns. The hop-up is a polycarb one-piece hop-up. It is a rotary hop-up, thankfully, and you get a nice click every time you rotate the cylinder to adjust the hop. It's obviously not going to de-adjust when you're shooting because it really does stay in place quite well. Pretty hefty spring that keeps the hop-up against the gearbox, which is rather nice. The barrel is surprisingly short. It's practically pistol length. It's about 150 millimeters long, but despite that, the range is still phenomenal. The bucking in here is rather interesting, though. I'm going to adjust the hop-up, and you can see it's two little fins that stick down in there, which is a really neat design. It seems to result in some very, very good consistency and accuracy. With the testing I did, it was with heavier ammo, and the range and accuracy were very impressive at a long distance. The MOSFET in here is actually rather large, especially with all the heat shrink they have on it. It ends up being about 2 inches long and probably about half to 3 1/4 inch thick. It's not small, and definitely with the limited battery space in the back of the gun, I wish it was a bit smaller. There is a fuse on the back, which again takes up more space. Not 100% sure that the fuse is necessary, but it is there. And it is a 25 amp fuse, it looks like. And of course, you do have a mini type Tamiya connector out the back end. The interface from the selector plate to the MOSFET is the small mechanical switch that sits under the plate here. It essentially tells the MOSFET whether the system is on semi or full auto. A really nice touch actually for G&G is the extra material they put on the front of the gearbox. It's much thicker and should have a much lower chance of failing or cracking or having any issues. Something a little unfortunate I did notice was when taking all the screws out, they were barely hand tightened. There's no Loctite, and they weren't very tight at all. So I feel like a lot of the screws could eventually back out if they're not tightened a little bit more when you get the gun. So let's go ahead and open up the gearbox here. The first thing I noticed when opening up the gearbox is everything's reasonably well lubricated. The gears, the piston, and the piston head, if we can get it out here, because it is stupid tight up in the front for some weird reason. Everything's got grease on it that needs grease. The spring the gun uses is a pretty linear spring. It is fairly long, and it feels like it's right about maybe a 110 or 120, somewhere between there. The spring guide is metal, has bearings, which is definitely a plus. The compression system is a little unusual. Just some unexpected things, not anything terribly different. The tappet plate is a little bit different. It's really stiff, actually, surprisingly so. And there are cuts in the front to match the larger portions of metal in the front of the gearbox. So you don't get as much material at the front of the tappet, but rarely do you have any issues with these either. The nozzle has a little cross cut in the front, which we'll see why that's necessary in a second. It's a standard nozzle, no O-ring, but it seats reasonably well. The air seal could probably be a hair better, but for stock gun, it works just fine. The piston is pretty normal for G&G. Second to last tooth is removed. Really nothing terribly special, one metal tooth. The piston head, however, is a little bit unusual for G&G. I'm not quite sure why they switched to a non-ported piston head. That is definitely out of the ordinary for G&G. I have not seen this from them before. It does use a red O-ring, which is a little bit different. The air seal is interesting to test because of the non-porting. It's okay. It's not perfect, but it's definitely better than a lot of stock guns I've tried. The cylinder head really doesn't want to stay in there terribly well. It's a polycarb, one O-ring cylinder head with a rubber damper on it. Could use a little bit of a thicker O-ring to help stay in the cylinder a bit better. The cylinder itself is roughly a Type 2 for an M4 length barrel. So because this is a really short pistol length barrel, this has a lot of extra air volume, which really helps with heavy ammunition and the impressive range we're getting out of it as well. The trigger switch in here is a little bit different because it wires directly into the MOSFET. So you've got a little 4-wire plug here actually. That goes directly to the MOSFET in the back. Then of course you've got your red and your black motors for motor power and to the battery. It's definitely a step up from like your standard Barui trigger design. Having a MOSFET that wires directly into a unit in the back, it's just a step up and it works a little bit better. You don't have contacts that need to protect or anything like that. The gears, of course, are G&G's really excellent quality gears. They do a really good job on any of their mechanical stuff in their guns. What I'm really curious about though is, how's the shimming quality? Let's go ahead and check that. The gears sound not the greatest spinning them. They definitely could probably use maybe some re-greasing, even though they have a decent amount of grease, but I'm sure shimming could use some touch up. Let's see. Actually, all the gears are shimmed rather nicely as far as having little to no axial movement between the bushings, which is definitely something you want to look for when you're shimming. The only thing I would change shimming wise, everything's actually really good considering, is the height between the spur and the sector. They're actually quite a ways apart. They definitely need to be closer together to help with durability. They'll work fine in the short term, but they may not last as long in the long term if the shimming isn't corrected on there. So they need to be moved a little bit closer together. There's too much of a gap between them. The internals for the G&G ARP556, I think for the most part, are pretty solid. There are a few things I would change out, and 1 or 2 questionable choices I think they made. Specifically the piston head, which is just weird that it wasn't ported. But they're minor parts, and if you do want to swap those out for something else that's ported or aluminum or anything along those lines, they're really not that expensive and pretty simple to do if you have a little bit of tech experience. I think for the most part, this gun is pretty solid. What I do want to talk about is the MOSFET and some interesting things I had happen to it when I was testing this on the field. Essentially what happened is, normally when I test a gun, generally guns come with a mini Type Tamiya. This did. And so what I'll do is all my batteries are wired to Deans. I'll use an adapter from mini Tamiya to Deans and just run a 7.4 to test it. I don't want to test guns with 11.1s too much, just to, you know, be nice to them at least. This one, for some strange reason, because of the MOSFET with the adapter and a 7.4, it only clicked on semi. So I'd put it on semi and it would just click. It wouldn't shoot at all. And I'd put it on full auto and it would shoot semi. So there's some kind of odd voltage issue going on with the MOSFET. I wasn't terribly pleased with that. I like to be nice to review guns and not alter them in dramatic ways. So of course I use an adapter. And when I couldn't test it on a 7.4 with an adapter, it was a little odd. I could still put it on full auto when it shot semi, but that's not the correct functionality. It should be shooting full auto. So that was a little strange. What I'm really looking forward to is Perrin did send over their ETU++ MOSFET. It's basically a direct drop-in and replaces the old MOSFET. You just plug and play and you're ready to go. That one has a Deans connector on it, so I should be able to run a 7.4 on it without a problem, and it does have a lot more functionality and options for the gun. This MOSFET, the basic G&G one, does have burst functionality for 3-round burst, but that's about it. So I'm looking forward to trying something a little more robust in the gun and seeing how the gun likes it and performs. I do have to give this gun a grade. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. There are small things that take away from it, a couple things in the internals and the fact that the MOSFET didn't like an adapter with a 7.4. Really, really small things. Their performance is fantastic, the build quality and the feel is excellent, and the fact that it performs so well in such a small package is pretty tough to beat. 8 out of 10 I think is a very fair grade for it. So I definitely recommend checking out this gun. It is a really fun gun to run. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, go to foxairsoft.com and check out their free gun giveaway. You got a chance to win a free high-end airsoft gun. There's a link in the description for that. I'll see you guys in a new review very shortly.